Frank Growth is brought to you by Winston Francois, a growth consultancy helping tech companies scale into leading brands. Do you need help with your marketing strategy or managing your growth channels? Visit wf.team/podcast to get in touch. That's wf.team/podcast. Let's grow.
One of the things that I feel relatively blessed with is the ability to see what matters and what doesn't. And I try to do a lot less of what doesn't.
Hi, I'm Jason Shafton. Welcome to Frank Growth. This isn't another business podcast. On this show, we talk about the hard things about entrepreneurship and marriage and raising kids, building companies, building families, and building a life that we can be proud of. Speaking of being proud, hi, Alyssa.
Hey.
My brilliant, beautiful, and powerful wife. Thank you for being my co-host in life and here on Frank Growth.
No problem. Wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah, I mean, literally, you have nothing else to do, right? It's not like we have a 12-week-old baby, kid in preschool, and you're preparing to go back from maternity leave to work. So nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
Great. So then, basically show over, nothing to talk about.
Yeah, just listen laundry.
Or maybe we could talk about what came out of our kid's mouth last night.
Our kid last night had two mouth whoopsies. She told someone to shut up in a very strangely, it was just this joking thing.
But it was spot on usage wise. She was talking. Etta did not like what she was saying, and so she told her to shut up.
Shut up. And then later in the evening, I gave her an extra nighttime gummy.
Melatonin.
Yeah, because I'm just a fantastic / horrible parent. And
well, I had already given her one, and it was a communication breakdown. It's on both of us. We're equally culpable.
She did not die of melatonin overdose, in case anyone's concerned.
They're 1 milligram each. The recommended dosage for her age range is 3 to 5 milligrams. So we only gave her 2. Yeah. I may have freaked out a little bit, which then caused her to
point at me and repeatedly call me an idiot.
But the third time she said it, she called you a yidiot.
She did, and that was really funny. And we all had a hard time not laughing. That's actually, I think that's one of the hardest things about parenting at this age, is that they do bad things, but because they're so little and they're just like figuring it out, they do it in such a weird little way that it's hysterical. And you're like, don't laugh. Don't.
It's cute. I was laughing hysterically because she's like, Mom, you idiot. And I was like,
and I'm like, great. This is going to be an easy lesson to learn now that you're laughing at her.
Nope. I can't. I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it, but it happened, and now she knows that she shouldn't say that to people.
Yeah, but
my favorite thing to do when she does that though is to ask her, "Where did you hear that first?" And almost always it's like, "Well, you and Mom, you guys, you're the ones that taught me the words "shut up" and "idiot." So,
great. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if it took her 4 years to get to that point, I feel like that's a win.
Yeah.
No F-bombs. There's no SHIT, and we say that like every day.
She did say it the other day after you said it. She did.
Well. Whatever.
Just the once. But yeah. Maybe we try to keep the other 4-letter
I feel like I'm just waiting for her to like drop something on her foot or like stub her toe, and then she's just going to be like, shit. And we'll be like, yeah.
She did say damn it like a year ago.
Yeah, that's true.
So then I coached her to start saying dang it or darn it, and she does do that, and that's amusing when it comes out of her little 4-year-old mouth. She
definitely has always said, "Oh my god."
Yeah, that's funny.
It is funny.
The reason you double dosed her is because I was busy doing something entirely unrelated to child rearing, and I was in my I have a new tech toy realm. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was all these like pieces of technology that are supposed to help us be healthier. Because you just went through a huge year of health stuff. And so I bought a smart scale, and I was setting it up last night and messing around with it, being a real idiot. And I I love like my Whoop and my new With Things scale and my Apple Watch. And I remember the first time you saw an Apple Watch, what you said.
Yeah, we were on our first date, and I told you I was going to throw your Apple Watch in the beer in front of you. if you kept looking at it. I was like, are you on a date with me or are you on a date with your Apple Watch? Because if that's more important, that's fine. I can go have fun by myself. I don't need you.
Yeah. Anyway, I like all this tech, and I'm a big nerd, so I can't help myself.
It's not that I don't like it. I like all the tech too. It very quickly turns into junk.
Yes, or a distraction from what really matters.
Rarely does it help, but as you know, it's more about getting people to buy it than getting people to use it repeatedly.
That is something I know. So part of my job is helping people figure out how to get folks to actually use stuff that's actually useful.
No, your job is how getting people to buy it. Well, if they use it, great.
Both acquisition and retention, Alyssa.
Yeah, that's true. But retention only matters for some kinds of businesses. They don't matter for every business. Like everybody's how much you use your scale. Though. Okay, so there's a subscription with your new scale?
You can buy one.
There you go. But that's just apps.
Didn't BMW, somebody came out in the last
Yes, BMW did.
If you want your seats heated, you'll need to pay $15 a month. I think that was the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they killed that because of the bad PR.
I mean, that's an insane notion that people are trying new things to repeatedly win customers, but they're like taking away features. Like you would have to do that with new generations where they don't expect those features already. Yeah. So you'd have to like have 10 years or more of actually not offering the feature at all in your cars anymore, so that then you can represent it to a younger market that doesn't think it's a feature at all.
At that point, we're going to be in driverless cars, and we're not going to own the cars, but they're going to be plastered with advertising inside of them. And so it's like when you get in a taxi in New York, and it's like Jimmy Fallon and the Tonight Show, and then some ads for crap.
Yeah, but then think about like Americana, right? Like the kind of like quintessential Americana where everybody's like still chasing this idea of just like driving a Ford pickup, So
that's
like,
not going to go away. You think that
no, you can't take that. I'm sorry. You can't take that away.
That's like trying to take away other stuff from him that we're not going to talk about.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. That'd be like trying to take our guns. It's not going to happen, buddy.
There it is. Okay.
Sorry.
So look, we might be teaching our daughter some bad words, but today we get to hear from two parents who have three daughters who are older than our daughters that hopefully we're going to get to learn from, and maybe they can give us some guidance on how to not teach them.
Question that I want to ask them.
Yeah.
Remind me to ask them, what was the first bad word to infiltrate their home?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe in rapid fire we can ask.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
We've got Hank and Carly Schlisberg on the show today. Hank is one of my favorite bosses. We worked together at Vively Health, which was part of DaVita. He was great at building strong relationships with the team. I always felt he cared a lot about me and us as a team and individuals, and not just the work that we were doing. Hank, I remember when you'd call me every Friday on your train ride from the office to home, and I just felt like you gave a shit, and that was nice. Hank is a passionate pursuer of healthcare value and health equity, and he's obsessed with solving hard healthcare problems. He's the president and CEO of Evio Pharmacy Solutions, a board member at Synergy Medication Collective, an ex-partner of over 11 years at McKinsey. He spent 7 years at DaVita in value-based care design and delivery with payers, health systems, and physicians. Hank has an MBA from the University of Michigan and is also the father of 3 amazing girls. And his lovely wife, Carly, graduated from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. Shout out to Pittsburgh, where Alyssa is also from. And she worked in healthcare for a few years before stopping to raise their 3 kids. Leah, who's 17, Madeline's 15, Julia is 12. And they've been living in Denver for the last 7 years and are just crazy busy keeping up with their 3 kids' travel, sports, softball, swimming, and soccer. So what did I miss? What's a big part of your story that's not on the CV and in those lovely bios?
You nailed it. Great job, Jason.
Yeah, I agree. You got it. How are you guys capable of splitting time with like business concerns versus family time? Like, how does that work running a household together? And I think maybe the larger question is like, how, Carly, did you come about deciding you were going to leave your job?
There are 2 keys. The first key is don't work that hard. So if you don't work that much and just kind of put in 20, 25 hours a week, it's no problem balancing everything. So that's the secret to my success, number one.
Is that right?
Yeah, yep, that's the way. Is just work less. And the second is largely leave everything up to my wife. And then everything gets balanced, and just drive when you need to drive.
Yeah. I would say I decided to stay at home with the kids very quickly because Hank was traveling Monday through Thursday at McKinsey, and he did that for 11-ish years. Mm-hmm. And that was just really hard. I was alone in a city. I'd moved away from family and had these young kids, and it was just too much to balance. I just couldn't do it all.
I often think about being in this house and having our first kid and going back to work, and I would cry myself to sleep so many nights, even with having help, because it just feels like kind of what Hank said to begin with, which is like, just do less, just take your foot off the gas and be okay with that. Because it's a lot, even whenever you're not driving at top speed. And then you add kind of that momentum to it, and you just kind of feel out of control all the time. So the more you can kind of claw back and do less and take cues from what the kids need and just do what the kids need and do nothing else, the better it starts to get almost. I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to do kids stuff. I'm going to do adult stuff, and we're going to figure out how to make it fun for the kids still, or we'll take the kids with us. And then it just got to the point where it was this is stupid and stressful. I'd rather be at Disney because at least I'm not trying to scarf down this super expensive meal. I can just slowly eat, and we can slowly do everything, and it's not a big deal. And the kids are entertained, and having kids that are happy and entertained and relaxed is way more enjoyable as a parent than the prettiest view or cobblestone streets or whatever, so I think it really is a less is more.
Right. Yeah. So I was just telling somebody an hour ago, so we live in Colorado. We used to take the kids skiing when they're young. We can't do it anymore. We have no time, but massive amounts of Skittles on the chairlift, which totally breaks all the health nutrition rules, but keeps them happy. And then you have a great day.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so billion snacks on the hike, and then they go on a hike and they remember the snack and we get the hike.
Right. And maybe you wanted to spend the whole day out there, but they want to spend about an hour.
Right.
So you spend an hour.
Right.
Because you still got to go.
Right.
I feel anymore, it's I love hanging out by the pool, but I'm okay, if I have to spend an hour packing for 20 minutes at the pool, maybe we just don't go. Maybe we just
we find a way to go do something that the kids like to do that we can enjoy as well. It's what is that macro compromise? First in relationship, it's how do we compromise, the two of us? Now we have kids, how do we compromise?
But I think if my kids are entertained and I'm not having to entertain them, that is the enjoyment.
That's the win.
That is my activity. Yep. I'm yes, I did it. I didn't have to do any of this. I just had to show up here, and this is all taken care of, and that's great.
Yeah. Yes.
Country club, take all of my money. Take all of it. Entertain my kids. Disney, take all of my money. You can have it. Just entertain my kids for me. They're dressed.
I think Alyssa is also kind of in, for me, what you just described of Carly Hank, which is she's figured it out, and I'm following her lead for sure on the how do we do this in a way that works.
Yeah.
So going back to the 11 years of McKinsey, definitely not working 20 to 25 hours a week. And now you fast forward to Evio, and you've got a team, some folks there I think in Denver, but a distributed remote team, and you're working mostly from home. I don't know how much you're traveling now, but how does balance look now, and how is it working now? And maybe talk a little bit about the hard problems you're solving at Evio, just for folks that don't maybe know the pharmacy space super well.
Yeah, so I'll do a little on that because it's less interesting, and then I'll answer your question about just the balance and all that stuff. So Evio is a joint venture of 5 different Blue Cross Blue Shield plans around the country. Those are independent state located entities, and they all got together, pooled a bunch of money, and said, boy, the drugs that people make to save our lives are amazing. And then everything else that happens after that is pretty squirrely. How they get to us and how much they charge and how much we have to deal with the intermediaries to tell us what we're allowed to take and not. And so if we had enough scale, if we had enough lives and financial backing and data, could we make a difference? And that was all I got. I was hired in February of 2021 as employee number 1. And I brought over a young woman that you know well, Jason, named Anna Armstrong. And we sat at this table right here in my backyard. And we said, well, what do we do first? Because we literally had to start from scratch, from naming the company to developing the strategy to buying benefits for people to writing a handbook. You name it, we had to do all of that from scratch, and it was super exhilarating. Balance. So all jokes aside on work less, I did get some advice a very long time ago when I was in consulting from someone who said there came a point where I figured out I could just do 20% less and nothing would happen, because we do things that don't always change the answer. One of the things that I feel relatively blessed with is the ability to see what matters and what doesn't. And I try to do a lot less of what doesn't. So that's number 1. I would say number 2, if you hire amazing people, it can be unbelievably self-serving. You can just work less. Right? It's better for them. It's fulfilling for them to do more. But the better people you hire and the happier that they are in the work they do, you just get to do less and then go to more softball games and soccer games and, do the other stuff that you want to do. And of course we work hard. Of course, being an entrepreneur is challenging and there's a lot to do. But I think the key is actually focusing on what matters and don't invent stuff.
When did you start letting your kids have devices?
I think it was around 6th grade for both of them, for all 3 of them.
When you get a phone and when you get social media are not the same thing.
That's true. That's fair.
So my wife has done a very good job of managing. Great, you have the phone, which is basically a walking around TV. That's really all it is.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Right? It's a TV in your bedroom that we didn't have. Other than that, we control everything else.
Did not have TV in bedroom as a kid.
No,
so
nobody.
No.
Yeah.
Or a phone.
Yeah, right?
I did have a phone.
She did. Well, Alyssa.
I 100% had a flip phone, and I would use it to remind my mom to pick me up because she would leave me places on accident.
Yes.
She would get super zoned into what she was doing. That's fair,
Yeah.
We're having a very different conversation, Alyssa, because they didn't even have the World Wide Web until I was out of college. And so you having a phone growing up, we're talking about 2 different planets.
Yes.
I don't know. I had a computer in my room, so I always think it's interesting to ask other parents, like, what is their position on it? Because I remember being pregnant with Etta and Jason's mom going, I just don't know how you have the courage to, like, raise a kid. I would be so freaked out about the internet. And I was like, I grew up with the internet. I lied to have a Facebook. I definitely had a MySpace page, like the whole 9 yards. So for me, I feel like I'm more empowered to give my kids devices, where like my 4-year-old had her own iPad at 2. And so then she knew where it was plugged in. And when we got her a lofted bed, she would go get it off the charger, take it to her room and watch TV. And then I'd find her in her room. I'd be like, oh, okay, you're just like quietly watching TV, whatever. And then it got to the point where I was like, well, I don't really like what you're watching. And so I was like, Netflix is kind of turned into like YouTube, like glorified YouTube. So it's got to go. So like I kind of circulate through the apps that she has access to now. But then it got to a point where I was like, you know what? Life is really fun. So we don't really need an iPad anymore. And now we just use it really sparingly, and it hides in my closet.
I want to watch TV on my iPad, and we'll say, oh, sorry, it's dead.
Yeah.
It's just dead. We forgot.
It's dead. Sorry. Or I don't know where it is. So if you can find it, sure.
Hank, I want to go back to something you said that I really liked, which was, this do 20% less and do the things that matter advice. Where were you in your kind of career journey when that actually like clicked for you and you felt like, okay, I've now dialed that in and I know the 20% not to do and how I can identify the things that matter? Like, where were you in your progression of your career?
I was at McKinsey in the Cleveland office. It was a partner named Terry Berland, who I used to work with a lot, who he probably did 50% less and was
good for Terry,
not fired. And it was in that run up when you're kind of deciding, do I stay and try to become a partner and be on that treadmill, or do I just get off? And that's exactly how we did it. And we talked about it. It was, I know what matters to get elected partner. It's have a couple of clients that you serve well and have something known for, which means you don't have to get on a plane every time somebody in Sao Paulo says, can you come speak to my client? You just can say, no, thank you. It doesn't work for me. And it was, the job was at that point, be successfully not fired every 6 months. And I did, until all of a sudden I became a partner and continued to do the same thing, which is focus on what matters. And that was really, really critical in consulting, where there's literally no limit because it's a global firm and you could do as much as you wanted. You could do as much as you wanted. There was so much demand. But then that definitely was something I carried forward in running businesses and leading teams and things like that, which is just focus on what matters.
Yeah, I can remember it in your leadership style and the way that you approached running Vively Health and what we ended up focusing on and what we were doing. There was a addition by subtraction going on and kind of the ruthless prioritization of the things that mattered and try to ignore the stuff that doesn't, even inside of big public companies that can send you off on lots of side quests all the time. I'm curious, I know, Alyssa, you were about to ask something, but before you do, Carly, is there a version of that for the way that you kind of run the family? Like, is there, like, with all the travel, sports, and all the things that you're doing with the girls, like, how do you actually get done the most important things, and what gets kind of left by the side of the road?
So I'm not good at it.
Are any of us?
I do not.
I'm terrible at it, so I want to learn.
I mean, I wish I knew. Honestly, I don't think I ever sit down. I never watch TV. Yep. Wake up early. Now my kids are up way past me, but I still go to bed late. And I'm like always taking, like, I shouldn't have taken my daughter, for example, to where she wanted to go just before this, because it got me home 10 minutes before this. Could have been a problem if I ran into some traffic, but I did it anyway. And so I find myself doing it all. And I probably need to find a better way to manage that. What about you, Hank? What do you think?
So I would say, first of all, you say yes a lot in an amazing way. So one of the things they did when we started the summer was they created this like summer bucket list, and most people would say, let's go camping this summer, or, let's watch a movie outside. And it is like 50 items long. And they will get a lot of cross-offs. So I would agree. I would say an area that you do really well, we do really well, is as the kids' sports teams start to become more real, more intense, and at times you even have things like recruiting and college and things like that, I think we do a really good job of figuring out what things matter to intervene on. Like, being the treasurer of the booster club is pretty critical, because if the team doesn't have money, the team doesn't matter. There's nothing. Do we really get involved in designing the uniforms? No, we don't. Which day there's practice? No, we don't.
Okay, here's a question for both of you on this specific topic. So I often find that we struggle where it's a choice between what we're passionate about and what we know moves the needle. So we know better, but we want to be a different person in that moment. Kind of like what you were saying about Carly always saying yes, despite kind of having better judgment, right? It's like, I want to be the mom that says yes, but I know my kid needs to go to bed at this time. Or I really want to plan a Disneyland vacation, but my kids aren't ready to stay up for fireworks yet, but I really want them to stay up for fireworks. So is it worse that I go and I know I have to miss out on the thing I really want to share with them as a memory? Or do we just say, screw it, and like go anyway and let them have a late bedtime kind of thing and just see what happens, right? I think that's always and I know Jason has his own things where it's like, do I buy the irresponsible sports car or do I get like the reasonable minivan option, right? Like it's that kind of push and pull of like, what are we passionate about and when do we push on that versus when are we willing to just, do we even have to? Do we have to say never mind to the passion part and just say we're only willing to do what moves the needle?
I'm the logic guy. She's the passion person.
I would say a long time ago, I decided that I was now a mom. And so I was like, I'm a mom, so I need the minivan, right? I'm well past that phase. But like early on with young kids, I said to myself, I'm now a mom. I have to embrace that. And I have to like just be that. That's who I am. And so I think I gave up some of those passion things and did what made sense for us as a family, and probably a little less as of like a couple. We probably should have done more couple things, which would be, just kind of doing what you want, right? But I did more of what maybe the kids wanted.
I always try and strike the balance. I was like, okay, I'm going to get a sports car, but I'm going to get a sports car with a back seat. So I'm slowly training Etta to not absolutely hate having the top down. And I'm also trying to get her to the point where she doesn't scream about how little space she has for her own feet.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like slowly I'll condition her and she'll be fine.
She'll think that is the extreme example of what Carly just described as like a much more mentally healthy approach to just being like, I'm getting the minivan because it's very practical and it's easy, and I'm not going to get yelled at.
Car with back seat. That was not the level of our decision.
Yeah, and as your kids age, you move away from that.
Yeah. You're not going to be like that forever, Alyssa.
Right?
I know. But that's why I'm hanging on to it for dear life. Because I'm like, someday I'm going to be 40 and I'm going to be like, I'm tired and I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? And like, that's great. I reserve that for my 40s. And right now I'm going to be unrealistic and I'm going to do all the stupid stuff. I always say, fuck up early and often, because it's excusable while you're young to make stupid decisions. Whenever you're older, people expect you to know better. Right? And so then they judge you for it.
I feel like you're saying that now, but then years from now, you're going to have a whole new rationalization for why you get to still keep fucking shit up. So anyway,
but it goes back to our prior point of who cares, what matters, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you buy a sports car and it turns out to have been a bad choice, and you sell it for $10,000, less, and whatever. That's the concept.
Yes,
it's not the end of the world. You go to Disney and it's no fun because they're too young.
Because they're crying.
Who cares? Okay,
exactly.
We'll wait a couple of years. Who cares?
Yeah. I want to go back to a little bit about Evio, Hank. I think you have had so many different vantage points on healthcare now that you kind of know the world of healthcare very well. And if you were to start a healthcare business today, maybe a better way to say this is if you were talking to somebody who was going to start a healthcare business today and start a healthcare startup, knowing what you know now, what would you tell them? What advice would you give?
So I think the single biggest problem that we have in healthcare is that we don't have aligned incentives. Right? It's always very healthy to just assume that people will act in their own self-interest, and we don't have aligned incentives, right? So that's true. Hospitals only get paid if people are in the hospital. Hospitals don't get paid if they're not in the hospital. Pharma companies only get paid if you take the drug, not if you don't take the drug. And so the first advice is find spaces where you have a better shot to align incentives. And one of the things that I never thought I would conclude, because I am entrepreneurial and capitalistic, is I have become a huge believer in the power of not-for-profit healthcare. And what I mean by that is there are so many amazing things happening and there are so many good ideas. And for almost all of them, they save $1 and then somebody wants to keep 50 cents for themselves because they have to create enterprise value for the company. And one of the things about not-for-profit healthcare, whether that's Blue Cross Blue Shield plans or whether it's community hospitals that aren't part of major chains that are for-profit or things like that, is it's not zero. There is that saying, no margin, no mission, right? But for the most part, the idea of retaining value for the company itself so that you can sell it for a high valuation, so that you can have an IPO, and so that the entrepreneurs can make a bunch of money, is not actually in the best interest of patients. It doesn't return the most value to patients. And so I would say, to your question, Jason, the better you can find yourself in a situation where the most number of parties have the incentive to actually do what's right for patients, and that just excess corporate profits can go away and be returned to the patient, the better chance you have of success.
What's a good example of this nonprofit? It's not. Is it Kaiser? It's not Kaiser, is it?
They Blue Cross Blue Shield plans all across the country, right? Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, insurance plans where they're never going to have an IPO. They're never going to sell the company to Optum. They're never going to try and they need enough profit to be able to reinvest in their capabilities and reinvest in their technology and keep premiums low.
Yep.
But they don't have an incentive to, as we say, always make the curve go up and to the right, right? Meaning grow profit, grow profit, go profit. Let's give it back to the member. Let's give it back to the patient.
I mean, I love that. It's a long way from where
we are.
Where you started, where we are, and where you started in your career. Even like, consulting and what I do too. Like, consulting is kind of a layer on top of those for-profit enterprises for the most part.
Totally switching gears. What is having a third like? Because we have two, and I mean, we're in the early stages of our second, and we can't necessarily find like the rhythm just yet. I mean, she's barely 3 months old.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But because I'm younger, I'm like, okay, well, we don't have to like say we're done though. And Jason's like, no, we're done. So what is it like having a third? And when did you decide that you were ready, or did it just kind of happen? A lot of people we know, it just happened to them. They didn't happen to it.
You know the old phrase, I wanted 1 and she wanted 3, so we compromised at 3.
That's true. That's really what happened.
Buckle up, baby.
It was very hard to have 2. Like when our second was 3 months old, we were way deep in it and lost for sure. And it's hard. It really is. But then you come out of it, you find your rhythm, you are you again, you're a couple again, you're a family again, and it's all good. And you forget all that. And you're like, oh, I'm ready to have another.
1 to 2 is the biggest because now all of a sudden the dad has to play.
Yes.
Right? Mom's job is no different, whether you have 1 or 2. All of a sudden, dad gets called in from the sideline on number 2, and that changes everything.
I'm in the game, man. And I was in the game at the start. I was in the game with 1. I just vividly remember not knowing what to do for the first 6 months and only then starting to catch up and always being 6 months behind. I now know what has to happen right now. I don't have some of the biological equipment to do it. Right. But occasionally I will feed her a bottle, and that is a way for me to help. Let's go and talk rapid fire. We have some questions we want to ask you and get your quick answers. You guys have a wealth of experience in growing this family and you're kind of growing a startup, Hank. So we're going to flip through these quickly. Alyssa is our rapid fire MC, and so I'm going to hand it over to her and let you rock.
Okay, Hank. So what is the best part of being an entrepreneur, and what is the worst part?
Everything's your fault, which is also the best part. My favorite part about being an entrepreneur is that there is no, I can't believe they hired that guy. I can't believe they have this process. I can't believe everything is my fault.
They are you.
Yeah, we are they. I am they. And so I actually love the fact that everything is my fault and my accountability. But my guess is if you ask my wife, she would say that's also the best part, right? Because you do have to always be on.
Okay, so Carly, what's the best part of being the partner of an entrepreneur?
The flexibility. He is available. He can make time in the middle of the day to run someone somewhere, or be available to go to games or a school event, or make time for us to just in the middle of the day, grab a quick bike ride together, or cut out early and have dinner. Yep. The flexibility.
And what's the worst part?
He's always needed. Like any time of the day, any day of the week,
because it's always his fault.
Yeah, because it's always his fault. So a lot of times you just have to say, okay, we were just talking. Do you need to take that? And we can pick up later, or let's just do it at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite number 1 parenting hack?
Recently is ask them if they'd like my advice.
Oh, that's a good one. Like, do you want my advice or do you just want me to listen? Mm-hmm. It's a good one. What about you, Hank?
So there's this app called Life 360, and you can see them wherever they are at any point in time, and even how fast the car they're in is driving and all that. And so
wow.
These are things we did not have. So you don't even have to say, call me when you get there and tell me, where you're going. And by the way, if you ask them that, they're like, why do you need that? You have my app.
What is the most recent event that caused you to realize how much you admire your partner?
Oh, I totally have one.
Okay, you go.
So we have a rising senior who has been doing college visits. Our 17-year-old daughter is, I'm sure you'll be shocked to learn, not always the easiest to spend time with. And so the idea of like 4 consecutive days just one-on-one is terrifying with her.
Stressful.
It's very, very stressful. And my wife is absolutely brilliant, like a Jedi master of managing that situation. I would be the one who'd be like, oh my God, we have 11 minutes before the tour. Let's go over here and let's go over, check out this and let's go check out that. And she would just consistently know how to, let's go back to the room and just watch a show. And let's just get some downtime and know when not to say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Right. And just sort of let it be. And they've done 3 trips together, and my daughter, not us, my daughter would say all were really good and fun. And I'm doing one tomorrow, and I'm terrified of so I'm like asking for tips because I just think she has managed it brilliantly. So I very much admire.
Thank you, honey. I would say our middle daughter can be very, very challenging with getting her schoolwork complete. It is she just doesn't do it. And so, Hank, I get really mad and I have a hard time controlling my anger around it and not yelling about it or micromanaging her on every single task and homework assignment and test prep, you name it. And I think Hank does a really good job of talking to her throughout the school year to keep her balanced and me balanced on it. And he's really great with her.
Well, that feels like a lovely place to wrap up and end our chat today. Thank you both for joining us on Frank Growth and for being here and being willing to do this with us. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
It was great.
It was super fun.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. That was really nice, and they I think they've got some things figured out, and we can learn a thing or two from them. What was it that stuck out for you, Alyssa? What are the things that you'll take away from that and try to apply to our world?
Well, 2 things. I'm not crazy in just doing this stuff. Like I'm willing to take chances, and that's okay. I'm saying yes to things, and that's okay, even if I'm ignoring my better judgment. All of that is fine. And sometimes you are rewarded for it, just like in business, right? I think on the other side of it, it's also okay to be at a job where you're intentionally just not getting fired. That's not a bad thing. They want you to do that too. It's a win-win situation, right? My corporate job, I'm very lucky in that I have it. That's it. It doesn't have to be more than that. It doesn't have to be a passion project. I don't have to be super inspired by it. I can love what I do because of what I get for doing it, and that's it. And I think transitioning from musical theater, where it is you get nothing and you just should be passionate about it. Just be passionate about the nothing that you get, right? And transitioning to, I'm not at all really passionate about this, but I really do genuinely love what I get, and so I love what I do, is such a weird transition. And I think people ask me about that a lot, but I feel even more empowered that that's a really happy, comfortable, and delightful place to be honest, because it allows me to take risks and be passionate about my life at home.
I like that. That is a good takeaway. I think that the do less, which is something I've worked on with my own therapist.
Yeah, for those that don't know, because I'm pretty sure no one knows, he also prints out do less on a piece of paper and has it taped to the wall in front of him right now.
It was.
It isn't anymore?
Podcast studio. Well, now there's like sheeting and lighting.
Yeah, well, see, even I didn't know that he doesn't have it anymore, so.
Yeah, well, I clearly failed. I've done more instead of less. So I'm still working on doing less. But I like that you can do 20% less and
the same shit will happen.
And still everything will be the same. And so like that is a clear action item for me. They showed that like our future when we are older and have older kids, that we'll get some of that time back that we've lost right now. You know, and so the action item for me out of that is to be patient, and that we will find some moments right now. Any other things that you took away?
The tantrums don't stop.
They're just different.
The topics just change. And I think something that this podcast is good for is what I've realized is that the social norms of parenthood have changed to involve men more and more, but conversing about the struggles of parenthood, the expectations and requirements of parenthood have not involved men. And so the thing I like about this podcast and my reason for being a part of this podcast is because I think women are asked to show up in the workplace, and then we are asking to be included in these conversations, and sometimes aren't, right? A seat at the table. That's what that means. Mm-hmm. And then men are not being vocal enough about how they're being asked to contribute to the home, but don't have a seat at that table. So I'm excited for these conversations because I think the things that you're capable of taking away is what season of life we're actually in, what the requirements are because of that, and what are the longstanding requirements of parenthood in totality. And I think on the flip side, it's what does it look like to have a wife who's working versus a wife that doesn't, right? Because you can't do 100% of that job. And I think the hardest part of being a working mom and being a working dad is that being a working dad previously did not have the same stipulations as currently being a working dad, because being a working mom didn't exist as broadly as it does today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so making sure that there are spaces publicly where we're both capable of holding a conversation around both business and parenthood is increasingly more important. And I don't think it exists enough. Because the answer can't be quit and take care of your family. One of you quit and take care of the family. That can't be it. We have to figure out a way to make this work, or it just really, truly doesn't work.
Well, I think the point there is actually that 50, 60 years ago, you could have a family of 4 or 5 on a single income and live the American dream.
Right.
And be, have a stay-at-home parent and a go-to-work parent. And 60 years ago it was dad goes to work, mom stays at home. And today, people can't survive like that. It's just not possible. You can't make a living wage. And so both parents need to work. And then how do you actually give the time and attention and care to your kids and care for them? And what you're saying is the other side of it, which is like, why can't we all have the fulfillment of a career and a family? And why can't we balance the responsibilities of the home? And I think the answer is that you can. But it's really hard. And, that's why in a lot of other countries, people have multi-generational households, and the grandparents live either in the same house with their kids and their kids, or they live on the block or in the neighborhood so that they can be the childcare provider so that mom and dad can both go to work.
Yeah. I think 2 things come to the top of my mind surrounding this conversation. One is the middle always gets squeezed first. And the other one is the guy who owns the Arizona Tea Company saying we should be the ones who stop expecting more and just be happy with where we are. Like, if corporations just accepted a certain level of contentment around what was happening in terms of growth and things like that, where they're like, yeah, we hit an equilibrium. We own all of this. Like, everything else is fine, and stopped asking for more from consumers. Just like the scale that you just bought that is like, well, we need an app and a subscription service. And it's like, you don't. You're a scale. Just be a scale, right? Like, just stop trying to be everything or be more. Just be content with the corner of the market that you've cornered.
I think that's okay. I think that's why Hank was talking about nonprofit as a solution to some healthcare incentives.
Yeah.
And you're referencing the Arizona tea founder saying, like, we could increase prices, but we don't want to charge people more for a can of iced tea. And that's great. But most people who run for-profit enterprise don't think that way. And so, the other takeaway and action item for me is, like, maybe there's something there in not for profit ways to solve some of these harder problems, and not leave it to the free market or capitalism to solve, which, as a capitalist, it's a challenge.
Well, that's what Hank was saying too. He's like, well, as a capitalist, it's hard to admit that sometimes growth isn't beneficial for society, Yeah. And it's like, right, yeah, some people are like, I'm not having families because growing a family doesn't make sense, right?
I think there was a lot there. I think they provided a great perspective on how to create a lovely home and a cool business that's doing something positive. And their partnership is strong, and they're finding their way with basically 3 teenage girls. They have a 12-year-old, so they're in for it when she turns 13, and one of them's going off to college. But I think they've figured out a lot, and it was cool to hear from them. I think that's where we leave it. Well, thank you for listening to Frank Growth, a Winston Francois podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.